Welcome to the Bold Analysis. In this podcast, I want to show you how the system is likely to collapse in the next 1 year. I was just reading a report this evening. I think it was done by Katiba Institute, and it was showing. Do you remember the statement by President Ruto that we wanted to calling for austerity measures so that we can have a 300 billion cut on our budget? That was done sometime last year, and the members of public were really told about that. The shocking outcome of that is that we were intending to cut 300 billion, but we only managed 10 billion, which was, in terms of what was saved, 10 billion. But if you become a little bit again more analytical and throw in inflation in the economy, then you'll actually realize that there is nothing that we managed to save from those austerity measures. But this is what is emerging very interesting. We have a budget, our budget bill, total budget, is 3.3 trillion. Our revenue obligation or our revenue target is 2.89 trillion. Well, let's just put it 2.8 trillion for billion, not billion, 2.8 trillion for the better understanding. So our deficit is 600 billion. Our fiscal deficit for example, you need 100,000 and you cannot raise 50,000. So the deficit is the 50,000 that is remaining. So what we have, our deficit is 600 billion. Now, there are two sources of government income. One is taxes, and the two is borrowing. So technically, we must go to the market, the financial market, and borrow 600 billion. Now, this is what has been said, and this is what Kenyans are being told. And President is saying that in this financial year, we have reduced what we are borrowing, because last time, I think we had a budget, I think around 3.2, if I'm not wrong, but revenue obligation, the target was 2.2 trillion. So we had to borrow, I think 1 trillion last year to cover our budget, but this time round, President is saying we've reduced it. So that is what we are being told, but this is what experts are saying. Ever since from Mwai Kibaki to date, our revenue stream has been increasing. I want you to get this because this is what will make us understand it well. There is no single financial year except 2007, kidogo, but since 2001, our revenue stream has been increasing. So it is not a problem. Like what President Ruto is saying now in terms of his taxation is just trying to be overambitious and just want a sporadic growth from our taxes, but it has been growing. So what has been happening for the last even 7 years, what the experts are saying is somewhere midway, probably by February there, government, not February, by probably November there, where now people are thinking about a supplementary budget, government looks at their tax obligations, as in what they have collected, and they realize that, it seems we are not going to get that target, or we are still far from the target. Then what they do, they adjust the borrowing window, the borrowing ceiling. So, for example, we are saying we need 2.8 trillion. That's what we want KRA to collect. And The what we want to collect, it means per month there is a target per month. So when you realize somewhere in the middle that you are not collecting, you're not meeting your tax obligations, you normally rush back to parliament and increase the amount of money you need to borrow. Now, what is shocking here is for the last almost all the financial years from since Ruto in 2013, that has been the case. And that has been the case that they have to go back and increase the debt ceiling. Remember the debt ceiling last year when Kanini Kego was the head of finance, the finance committee, was in charge of finance, chairman of the finance committee in the National Assembly. There was a big debate about our debt ceiling, but the government will always insist on increasing it. So what he's saying is that over the years, we have always failed to reconcile our budget with our expenditure. As in, what we collect, it has never tallied with our expenditure. And someone asked, this country has many experts. What is making it difficult for these experts to just make sure that we can budget for what we can collect? You know, we've always not have a problem of collecting taxes. This is the truth, by the way. All of this which are being told, it is not the first time we are going to have a tax increase. Because businesses are growing, population is growing, the consumption is high, and strategies are growing. And of course, there is always a trial to try to make this year better than the previous year. In life, you cannot just be stagnant. And even government has never been that stagnant. They normally grow. But not the level of growth of our revenue is lower than the level of growth of projects the government wants to do. So that is where it collapses. And he's saying our revenue has been growing slower than our spending. When we get the gears on spending, economy will stabilize. But when we finally fail, the more we fail to rationalize our expenditure with the revenue, the system is going to fall. And actually, the experts are saying that the more we overstretch the taxation policy and regime, in this regime, we are most likely to suffer tax evasion. Quite a number of people will actually evade tax. Companies will start paying people through M-Pesa and Bahashas. That should be it. So, what do you think has brought that collapse? We're going to collapse because that which we are saying we're going to collect, we cannot collect it, and we still have to go back and talk about how much we need and adjust it. Simply because of these three reasons. PowerPoint. We have allowed political interests to organize our governance and influence what should be otherwise technical decisions. This is what I'm saying. Currently, probably with a budget of if you look at the budget we have, that deficit is 600 billion. If you go and check our annual development plan, our ADP, you will actually realize that quite a number of that, some cash there, but part of what we need there is going to some projects that we can shelve. But political interests is what is at stake in organizing in our governance and is otherwise influencing those technical decisions. It will be technically right for the budget committee and even the treasury to say that we can not manage 12 dams, we can only manage 4. But that is technically right. But it will be politically wrong because William Ruto wants to impress Region X and Region Y that did not vote for him. Recently, we saw rerouting of some dam budget that was supposed to be in the mountain taken to Kambani for some political reasons. So unless we make sure that our budget making process is devoid of the political interests, there are some projects that are just being hatched there because they belong to individuals. Some few roads are being constructed in some areas forcefully, even against overstretching the same budget, because some one or two people needs to collect some money and some kickbacks from it. So that has created the kind of quagmire we are in. And that is what those analysts are saying, that we must leave the technical team to do the work and present to President, tell President that in this financial year, in terms of dams, we can only do 4. So and we can only do 4 within a budget of X amount of money. So whether politically, but President will have to maybe do 1. So when you go to those rallies, you don't promise all the dams. But the problem is here. Number 2, it is collapsing in the next 1 year because of public accountability loopholes. I can look at you in your eye, my viewer, and tell you, Uhuru Kenyatta did not lie, and Uhuru Kenyatta faced a lot of frustrations, and that is why he said that this country is losing 2 billion a day. That was not a joke. He was saying it from a point of knowledge. It is indeed true that this country loses a lot of money. Part of what we borrow and even what we collect, we have what is called budgeted corruption. Budgeted corruption, where, just a simple one, along the road here, the matatu guys are collecting money, and around the police roadblock, they are holding some 50 bobs in their hands. They give those matatu people, they give those policemen, and probably it's a value chain where that police is supposed to give someone and give someone, give someone. So what are we talking about? We have accountability loopholes, and there is something that President Ruto is not speaking about and is not acting about: the accountability. The accountability. The KEMSA, no money was lost, but there was quite a debate about how people became very irresponsible. The sugar, no money was lost because it was a bit of a private business. It was a business to business something. But there is a level of recklessness that was seen there. In different ministries, people are fighting on who to become the accounting officer. Why? Is it just in the spirit of public service? It's because we have failed. I saw an article, yes, it was in Nation last Sunday, where under government ministry, a tender was given last year in September. And then after that tender was given, and I don't know, money was even rewarded, before even the said tender was advertised. So, the chairperson, I think it was a state department, not even I think it was in a parastat. It was a state department, if I'm not wrong. Someone gave a tender before it was even advertised, and the figure was ballooned. So after the tender was given in September, it was again advertised. It's when it was being advertised in January. And, reverse. Lastly, we have the tax leakage. There is a difference from tax. There is a difference from public accountability loophole and then what is called tax leakage. Tax leakage is what others have found a very interesting jargon to call tax exemptions. I don't think they're exemptions, they're just leakages. Because the word exemptions has been abused, and these exemptions are abused. The blue-eyed companies evade, and it gets into people's hand. A leakage in the sense that instead of that money being paid through the customs and getting to the government, people get dubious ways in the middle here and pay taxes to people's pockets. And so, I agree with the president. You must up the stakes and put KRA on toes. Otherwise, this is collapsing in the next 1 year. And we may not be shocked. We are here. Oh, God will give us life. This debt, our fiscal debt, our fiscal deficit is 600 billion. We will not be shocked. I'll come back here when we will be talking about Parliament is passing a supplementary budget that has surpassed our debt, our deficit, so that they go back to the market and start begging for the loans. Now, these are the fellas that are telling you we will not borrow. Ladies and gentlemen, that's my take. Let's meet in the next.